Hello, everybody. This is Zach Said It Again. I'm your host, Zach Cooley, and it is a privilege and an honor for me to be talking with my friend and musician extraordinaire from the Abacab Genesis Tribute Band, keyboardist Patrick Raymaker. How are you, buddy? Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it, man.
Well, it's a great honor to talk with you. As you know, I have been a big fan of Abacab for, I guess it's been 2 years now. And from that Saltville gig on Labor Day a couple years ago, we all became great friends. And I had the privilege of having lunch with you guys last year when you came through Withville on your way to a private gig in Marion. But that Saltville show was one of the ones that I will never ever forget. It was as close as you're going to get to the real thing. And it for me and my family, it'll be an evening we always remember.
Well, thank you. You know, we certainly put a lot of work into our shows, making sure that we're as tight as we can be, you know, because there's all these little intricacies that we have to make sure that we, achieve and we complete in order for the sound to be as close to what it can be as possible, you know? Yeah. Absolutely, man.
And the reason we're talking today is because my family and I get to go to Charlotte tomorrow to see your farewell show at Amos Southend. Tell us, first of all, let's back up and tell me at first how you got into Genesis, and then tell me how you got into Abacab.
Sure, absolutely. Well, you know, I was a kid, probably a teenager, somewhere between the ages of 11 and 13, when I had first heard Turn It On Again. And I love that tune. I thought it was great.
That's my favorite one, too. Yeah.
Yeah, it really got me into Genesis. I didn't know too much about them at the time because I was, still into other things and, but I'll tell you, that was the song that got me into them. But the album, when I went to the store, I wanted to find that song on the album, but they didn't have the Duke album. But instead they had the Shapes album, the Mama album. And I thought, wow, this looks like an interesting album. My brother has this album on cassette. And I thought, I don't have much money. I wouldn't mind trying it out, but I want to listen to my brother's cassette first. And my brother had the cassette of the Mama album, and I listened to it, and I was sold, like, in the first, few songs, especially Mama. It's one of my favorite Genesis songs of all time. I immediately went back to the record store, and I bought the Shapes album, and I fell in love with them ever since then. It took me a while to become a huge, huge fan because, I was still into other things at that time. I'll be honest with you, they were sort of the band that I respected and that I liked. I didn't really, really understand their music until I started playing in this band.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, absolutely, man, because Pete Lentz, our lead singer, I've done dueling pianos with him in bars for the past 15, 20 years.
Right.
And he was the guy, we used to play here at Howl of the Moon in Charlotte, and he was the guy who said, you know what, we should put together a Genesis tribute band. And I was like, wow, that'd be awesome. And I didn't know what I was getting into at the time. I had no clue. I didn't even have the right equipment. But I said, sure, why not? What the heck, right? And so we did. We started rehearsing at Cliff's house, our bass player. And he had a little partitioned off in his garage that we were able to set everything up and do it. And that's when I really, really, really started to become acquainted with their music. You think you know somebody's music by listening to it, but you don't really know it until you actually sit down to rip it apart and learn it.
Yeah.
And
you're playing Tony Banks stuff, and that is
yeah.
that is as collegiate of a keyboard player in rock music as you're ever gonna get.
Yes, absolutely. And it's not just the technique that he uses during his songs that can be very demanding. It's also the sounds. I probably have spent more time in the last 5 or 6 years, tweaking everything to have it sound perfectly. It was a little rough at first, in the first couple of years in Abacab. I didn't really quite have it, and I wasn't sure about how that was going to be, but eventually all panned out and fell into my lap when I was able to figure out the sounds that he was using on completely different keyboards that he's not using, that I am. So I had to change a lot of things. A lot of the sounds that he gets from his keyboards are from other keyboards that you would have to go out and buy just to get that one sound,
right.
And so I was fortunate enough to buy a Korg Kronos. And those things are not cheap, but believe me, that solved my problems with engineering and trying to get the sounds to the best of my ability.
Sure.
So yeah, that's how that happened. And we started rehearsing about 8 years ago, and 8.5 years ago, and it's been wonderful. Really just one of the greatest experiences I've ever had in a band. Very fortunate.
And I'm assuming that you've been in many bands, many local outfits.
Yeah, well, the only other band that I was in was in the Pinkest Floyd band, which was fun too. Of course, there's Pink Floyd bands all over the place, right? That's nothing new. But that's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But then certain things happen, and everybody went their separate ways for now. And but you do what you can. You do what you can for sure.
And the Genesis outfit is very unique and very, I would say, very satisfying as a musician.
Yes, absolutely. That's how I know I'm going to miss this very much so.
Right.
And it's really tough. It isn't easy. Yeah. But you understand. As much as I love Charlotte, things are just kind of tough here. Mm-hmm. So hopefully I'll be working more in Nashville. That's all. And we're working as much as we can, and that's why I'm hoping that I'm not getting out at a bad time, because we're working more and more. But, like I said, it's tough to pay the bills. But when we are working, it's great,
Sure.
I just want to make sure that I'm doing my end of the bargain when it comes to that stuff around here.
Now,
my wife is awesome. She's great, in every way. She's helped me out, and I can't ask for enough,
Right. Where are you from originally?
Originally, I'm from Calgary, Alberta.
Wow.
Calgary, Alberta, right above Montana. Yeah, in the Rocky Mountains.
Wow, you're Canadian. So how did you find your way to Charlotte?
Well, it's a long story. I first of all studied school in Boston at Berklee College of Music. And then I went back home, played in various country bands, and then I got a gig with Disney on the Disney cruise ships. So I did that for a couple of years. That was really interesting. If you've ever lived on a cruise ship, it's a little bit different than being a guest on a cruise ship, I'll tell you. Good experience nonetheless. And after that, I saw what was going on. They had this thing called dueling pianos, which is two piano players that sit across from each other and tell jokes and play songs and do sing-along and stuff like that. And that's what I wanted to do. I was like, oh, that looks like a lot of fun. Of course, that was back in the day when, you could go on stage and pretty much do anything and people wouldn't mind, right? Yeah, and I started dueling pianos back in 2000, 2001. And that's where I moved around a lot, because it's a bar gig, right? And these bars are going up left and right in every city across the U.S.
Right.
So I was in Columbia, South Carolina. I was in Raleigh, North Carolina, at a place called Rum Runners. And then I got a job at Savannah Smiles, and I was down there for about 2 years. And then I met my wife, my present wife, at Savannah Smiles. So if I wasn't doing dueling pianos, I wouldn't be with the lovely woman that I'm with today. That's for sure.
Well, congratulations to you.
Thank you. Yeah, and I met her in Savannah, and then after that, I was doing dueling pianos in different places. Went to Greensboro, went to Fort Wayne, Indiana, went to Portland, Oregon. Just other places around, and Houston, Texas. I was working in Houston, Texas. I was working in Florida. So I lived in about, if you can believe this, about 20 different cities before right up until now. Charlotte is one of those cities, if you can believe that. I've lived in about 20 different cities doing music.
So you were literally a touring musician, just trying to find a place to live.
Well, and the bar gig is like, it's okay. You know how bars are, though. You know, the population of bars, people go there for a little while and they sort of stop, and then, it's not the place to go anymore. Mm-hmm. Everybody's going somewhere else. So that's always a tough thing to deal with when it comes to owning a business like that. I mean, you have to really be in a high volume traffic tourist area for things to sort of constantly be going good, rather than just a typical city locale, but that's where I really honed my skills as an entertainer, doing dueling pianos.
So then in dueling pianos, that's when you worked with Pete, and then that's how you found Abacab.
Yes, absolutely.
So you've been with Abacab about 8 years, you said?
Yeah, 8.5 years. January of 2016.
Wow. So how heavy is this gig tomorrow night going to be for you emotionally?
I've already shed tears on the road last week when we were playing our gigs out of state. And that, sort of puts a lump in your throat. It's going to be emotional. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be tears, and I will have them first and foremost. And
you have a pretty deep bond with all the other guys, right?
Yeah, I know I'm not going to find cool guys like this anywhere I go. I mean, that's the other thing that I really cringe upon. It's like, well, when I go to Nashville, I'm going to have to just have a different attitude, put on my sort of I'll work with anybody hat, and however people are, just deal with it.
Right.
But these guys, we've been through a lot with each other, we've all seen our own personal sort of, not demons, but we've all witnessed our own personal difficulties through the last 8 years. And, although some people's difficulties are a little bit more than others, we've all been there for each other. We've all helped out each other, and there's that. So we definitely have a friendship. Plus we have a camaraderie of being able to talk about anything musically, even in movies, TV shows. We just have that, and we're very, very compatible that way, no matter what our differences are,
Well, it really, it's my belief that friends don't really become friends until you go through something together, so...
That's right, man. Absolutely, you are correct.
The fact that you have weathered that with these people, and I've had the pleasure of having Pete and Matt on my podcast. So the next Abacab gig that comes around is going to be Cliff's turn, just so he's aware. He's next on the chopping block for me. But
that's right.
But I know them all to be wonderful guys, and I'm very happy to call you guys my friends.
You are our friend, man. We're privileged to have you as our friend.
Well,
seriously.
And I return that wholeheartedly, because I am 100% a fan and 100% a friend to all of you guys, and I'm so thrilled and privileged that I'm going to be there for your very last gig. I can't tell you what that means to me and my family, so I'm very grateful to you all for having us to Charlotte. I hate that I missed last year's gig when you did the entire Shapes album, because it's one of my very favorites. Hope I will have an opportunity to see that again in some form, even though it won't be with your masterful keyboard playing.
Oh, you will. We're doing like almost half the album tomorrow.
Awesome. So
don't you worry, my friend.
Well, that's what I was going to tell you. That was going to be my next question. It's going to be a very packed show for something of every Genesis fan at every era. So you want to explain
Yes.
a little bit about what's going to be at the show? It's going to be like a 3-hour show, am I right?
Yeah, probably 2.5, 3-hour show. We'll see. You know, John might let us go a little bit later, but you know, there's of course there's laws to follow, right? Disturbance laws and all that.
Right.
So, but yeah, it's going to be a great show, man. Heavy show for sure.
A lot of stuff from the Lamb too.
Oh yeah, we're doing at least half that album because we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of that. I'm really looking forward to that. I don't want to give you a spoiler alert as to what we're doing.
Right. Okay.
I want it to be a surprise for you, man, for sure.
Fair enough. And I'm, again, so thrilled to be there because I know it's a heavy show emotionally as well as a heavy show musically. Be something there for every era of Genesis. And that is very exciting. What do you think, since you are doing you have been doing the Tony Banks keyboard in this, what do you think was the most challenging and the most rewarding for you to learn as a keyboardist in the Abacab?
For me, it was probably songs like Firth of Fifth on Selling England by the Pound, Robbery, Assault, and Battery, from Trick of the Tail, Madman Moon from Trick of the Tail, because you got those two keyboard parts.
Right.
We do use some, and I don't want to lie about this. I mean, I'm being very truthful but it also sounds better. We do use very, very little, but we do use some backing tracks. But, it helps definitely get that sound and met the point out, but it's very, very small stuff for the most part. But yeah, those songs, Supper's Ready, was an incredible challenge for sure, and to be able to pull those songs off, it was definitely, but like I said, for me it was more working on the sounds, making sure I had the sounds right, and yes, making sure that you got the music right too is a lot of practice. So it's a gigantic effort. It's you're not just having to pull off the technical stuff when it comes to the playing, but you're having to make sure that you got the right sounds. And so yeah, those songs, even stuff like Dancing with the Moonlit Night, stuff like that, Duke's End, Duke's Travels, like the very last songs from Duke, which is what we've been doing on the road lately. So yeah, I mean, basically those tunes. So albums like Selling England by the Pound, magnificent works. I call it a work. Supper's Ready is a work. It's not a song because it's a collection of songs.
It's a rock opera, really. A mini rock opera.
Absolutely, yes. And Robbery, Assault, and Battery is really crazy. That's probably one of the most technically demanding Genesis songs that there is, because you got a solo here, you got a solo there, and then you got 50,000 chords that you have to have right in between.
And I have the coolest 10-year-old daughter in the world ever, because I properly brainwashed her into being a big Genesis fan, and Genesis was her first concert in 2021, and if you'll remember at the Saltville gig, she sang with Pete. She did on Tonight.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And knew every song that y'all were playing. She's a big fan of In the Cage. She's a big fan of Robbery, Assault, and Battery. This is the cool, and her first concert was Genesis, November 2021 in Charlotte. That was her first concert. And,
wow!
And I know, were you there? I know some of the Abacab guys were there.
Yeah, I probably was. Oh yeah, that was at the one that Phil. The last Genesis tour concert.
The Spectrum Center. Yeah, that's the only time I've ever gotten to see Genesis. Seen Phil a few times, but that's the only time I ever made it to see Genesis. So we were there. We were there, and that was her first concert. And man, what an amazing experience! And to share that with your daughter, and knowing that your wife and daughter are enjoying that as much as you are.
That's awesome.
That was such a thrill. And
that is great.
And the fact that she, like I said, is a fan of those Genesis deep cuts just makes her the coolest kid on the planet.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
She's going to be there front and center. She's told everybody, I'm going to see Abacab. They're a Genesis tribute band, and they're friends of ours, and they're friends of ours, and we're going to get front row seats. And she's told everybody. So it's going to be a major experience for all of us. So I cannot thank you guys enough for making sure that it happens and making us a part of it.
You're very welcome, dude. It's our pleasure, our privilege. We're very lucky that we have such a fan in you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I hope that we are able to stay in touch when you go to Nashville. I will be, monitoring your success, and if you play in the area, we'll if you play in the area, the Charlotte area, we'll try to get there and support you. So hopefully this won't be the last we see of each other.
No, it won't, man. I definitely am glad that I got your information, your contact information. You got mine.
Mm-hmm.
We'll definitely keep in touch with each other. And no, this is going to be great, man. Just because I'm moving doesn't mean we're not going to talk anymore, for sure. You
bet. So what do you have any plans in Nashville? Or you?
My whole thing is to maybe get in and do a lot of session work. To play on people's albums, play on people's projects.
That's amazing.
Just to do as much of that as possible. Whether it's in the studio, I might have to go on the road with certain bands. That's all right too. But you have to be careful because you want to make sure it's music that you don't mind playing.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's going to happen to me. I've got some connections out there. I got a little bit of a resting point because I've been teaching for 13 years, right? So I'm going to stop doing that for a little while.
Teaching music?
Yeah, teaching music, man.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, I did want to mention before we close out here that I had, and I'm sure Matt mentioned this too, but I remember, Pete doesn't mention anything that he doesn't mention it wholeheartedly. He is nothing if not 110% all the time.
Wow.
I know you know what I mean on that.
Yes.
But he told me that the way that you did those Tony Banks, the way you figured out those Tony Banks chords and everything was masterful. Because he says, that's where his biggest strength lies is in being a keyboard player. So he is amazed and, of course, was very enthusiastic about the way that you duplicated those and mastered those Tony Banks riffs, and
wow.
and as are we all, in a thing like in a track like Robbery, Assault and Battery, or even something that you wouldn't think about as Tony Banks heavy, like The Second Home by the Sea. You are Tony Banks, and he is not shy about saying he's the leader of Genesis. But Tony Banks, his keyboard work is the driving force of Genesis. So
yes, it is.
For you to I don't want to say mimic, but to replicate that sound so beautifully and so true to form is an amazing talent.
I appreciate that. I try my best. I'm still to this day, even on my last gig, figuring stuff out, realizing, oh man, I should have done this. Like, it wasn't long ago when somebody commented on one of our YouTube videos saying that I was doing the wrong chords on a song, and I was like, wow, that's quite audacious. And I was listening to myself going, wait, he's right. He's absolutely right. I gotta get that right.
Right.
And I did. I finally got it right. and I wouldn't have known if that guy wouldn't have told me.
Right.
So, I mean, stuff like that, it might seem like it's embarrassing, but actually at the end of the day, it helps you immensely.
Helpful.
Wow.
And if you're an artist and somebody attacks the project that you do, it's like insulting one of your children.
Yeah.
And then you have to go back and look and see that they are flawed, and that hurts.
Yeah.
But it's something that has to be done so you can improve. Because an artist's work, whether you're a writer or a musician, you never stop learning, and that's the key to being an artist, is that it never ends. It's always a continual learning process.
Yeah. Well, and Tony Banks, he's got 6 to 8 keyboards that he uses.
Right.
I've got 3.
Most of them at one time,
Yeah. And so I have to make the most absolutely of my Korg Kronos, which is the one I have in front of me. That is the absolute driving force to getting those Tony Banks sounds. But it's worth every penny. And
absolutely.
My mom sadly passed away in 2017, but she was glorious enough to be that awesome parent that left me a few dollars when she passed, and I was able to get that Kronos because of that.
God bless her. So every note you play is to honor her memory, I'm sure.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
And
yes.
I want to mention one more thing before we go. Bella and I, Bella is my daughter, we took in the Seconds Out live stream. We watched that live.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I saw you commenting on it last October. Absolutely.
We were part of the Q&A before it started, and we saw that, and that was an amazing experience. Just the two of us there, and we were rocking out, and I took a still shot of us, and I'll have to share that with you, but
yes, please do.
That was an amazing experience. I mean, every second of that. I mean, you brought that to life. I mean, everything short of Phil Collins sitting there in the chair in front of me. That's as close as you're gonna get to the real thing. And I really, you don't know how thrilled I was to find you guys, and then to find that you all were such great human beings, and to become such great friends with all of you. Your friendship means more to me than I can put into words, and I might get a little emotional myself talking about this, but you guys came into our lives at a time when things were very, very low, and that day brought us out of that hole. After that Labor Day, we knew, as the Genesis song says, we knew it was going to get better, and it did. And since that, your friendship and your music has continued to provide us with that hope that better days are ahead. And I can't thank you enough for what you all have given us, and I'm glad I've had a chance to express that to Matt and to Pete one-on-one, but I'm so glad that I have a chance to tell you that before you move on, because you have made a difference through your music and your friendship, and you have been a light in my life and my family's life that you probably never understood how important it was. So I'm grateful to have the opportunity to tell you that.
Wow. Thank you very much, man. I'm glad to be that kind of influence in your life. We all are. We all are, absolutely, man.
And tomorrow night...
Oh, the guy, his name is Dan Vitko. He's great. He's going to be replacing me, and he's awesome, Maybe in some ways he might be a little bit better on certain things, but he's a great guy. And I'm really glad that he's taken over my spot. I know him well.
Thank you for this conversation. I've enjoyed it more than I can say, and I look forward to being able to see you and giving you a hug tomorrow night.
Oh, yes, sir. Absolutely, man. I'm very much looking forward to see you.
Take care. All right. Bye-bye.